It looks like the American people are becoming vigilantes and normal law abiding citizens are cheering this on. This whole flock revolution, this revolt against flock cameras, from what I'm seeing, is basically a bunch of people who may otherwise be non criminals committing technically criminal acts. They're destroying these cameras. And this is happening all over the country. And I really don't know of anyone who is opposed to this. Well, actually, I do. I know one person, and he's a police officer. He's a police officer in Atlanta. He's someone I've known for a very long time. I think he's a great person. He was in the military. He was a paramedic. He saw some things and whatnot, but he's a great guy. And his argument is that this helps me to do my job better. It helps me to catch bad guys. It helps me to bring justice. And I think his intentions are well founded. I think, he's a good Christian man. He's got a good record in his life and whatnot for the most part. And I see where he's coming from, but this reminds me of the deal where when we had the whole COVID hysteria, the doctors, the medical experts, including in the towns that I lived in, whatnot, they were advocating really draconian measures. A lot of the ones that I opposed and most people opposed, whether it be the lockdowns, the forced masking, um, the house arrest, as I call them, all these things that we ended up learning that didn't really even have that much of a basis in science as we continue learning about what Fauci was saying. And also, they had long term drastic impact, like bad impacts with the schooling. I'm not a fan of public schools anyway, but apparently it made kids who go to public schools even dumber. They're still recovering from that. We know that we lost lots of businesses that never came back. Thousands of businesses never came back because of this. And as we continue to learn, there was all sorts of skullduggery around that, where remedies that worked, that have been proven to work, were suppressed so they can roll out a vaccine that ended up to be not so good and efficient. So anyway, so I tack this to this. I don't have a name for it, but it's kind of this tunnel vision of the expert tunnel vision, or the institutional tunnel vision. If you're a police officer, all you mostly see is how to do your job, and I think that's kind of a good thing. But you're not seeing the whole picture, and there are more important things than just police catching bad guys or us being safe, because China is a very safe place from what I understand it. A very close colleague of mine lived there for 5 years. He taught there as a professor. And so I got some firsthand information from him, not just what you get through Western media. And one of the things that he told me that I still remember is the fact that, the trains run on time and the city's very clean. Well, why do they run on time and why is the city very clean? Because it's a police state. They have cameras everywhere. I did a report some time ago, I have it somewhere, um, about the AI totalitarian state that is developing. And China has the most CCTV cameras out of every country. They have them all over the place. They follow their people, they watch their people, and because it's a communist totalitarian state, they really don't. The people don't have much of a way to oppose it, to resist, and whatnot. So all that to say is that if your point as a police officer, as a whatever sheriff's deputy or whatever you are, is that this helps me to do my job, and you're not very interested in the implications that it has for personal liberty and whatnot, that's not a very good, that's not a very um, contextual understanding. And quite frankly, you're not prioritizing what's more important. And what's more important is that we have freedom, we have liberty, because everyone should have that, including police officers, because at some point the system turns on you. If we build this totalitarian surveillance state. So anyway, this flock thing is becoming a thing. There are reports now every day of these flock cameras being destroyed, and they're destroyed by vigilantes, whatever you want to call it, protesters who are taking, I guess, the law into their own hands or whatnot. I imagine that some of that has to do with the frustration that some of these people experience. There's been pushback at city council meetings, at county commission meetings, or whatever local forums hosted this conversation, where essentially it's kind of seems like it's kind of like the data center in some instances, where it's a dog and pony show where they pretend like they give a crap about what you say and they don't. You could tell it's just they were just there to pretend like they care. I actually attended one of these. We have a data center that is being constructed here in northern Kentucky where I live, and I went to the high school where the company that is building it was going to sit there and talk to us and assure us. And during the Q&A section, which they didn't leave a lot of time for, they would drag out the answers so that there wouldn't be a lot of people who can ask questions. And then they said, oh, look, it's time, it's 8 o'clock or whatever. And people were like, a lot of people were like, no, we can still go. We want to. And they didn't do that. So it seems that maybe what's happening with this thing is the same. People said, it's like, fine, you don't want to listen to us? We're going to take the law into our own hands. And that's kind of a very American thing. I'm not condoning it. I'm not promoting it. I'm certainly not doing it. But let's be honest. Most people don't care that this is happening, and a lot of them are cheering them on. And this is really normal people. It's people who pay their taxes, people who send their kids to public schools, people who go to church. I'm one of those. And I'm really not ashamed to say that I don't care. I don't care that they're destroying this. I'm not going to do it. I would prefer other avenues, and those are being explored as well. And that's the way I would do things, and that is the way I do things and whatnot. But it just tells you where we are as a country when basically you have this nationwide support for what's essentially crime. It's vandalism, as they call it. That's what this is. Those cameras don't belong to you, and they're destroying them. And the main argument is that they're being used to violate our Fourth Amendment rights. And so that is what's driving this. Now, there are plenty of reasons that other reasons that people are mad about this, or are motivated, aside from the fact that this is basically a thing that totalitarian states do. This is what they do, and like I said, in China, they do it in other countries too. I'm sure they do it in Russia and whatnot. Singapore, which is a one party rule totalitarian state, although it's clean and it works well and whatnot. So what this is it kind of looks like it turns us into that, and kind of people have had enough of that. We see it with the data centers. We see it now with this, and they keep making excuses that it's about our safety. And like I said, it's like, well, some things aren't worth our safety. You know, when I was arguing with my police officer friend, he's like, well, there's instances where without these cameras, you can't catch the bad guys. And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes that's what it is. Sometimes that's what it is. It is what it is. You know, there's all sorts of ways to do police work. And I did kind of take a shot there, because one of the things I hate that police does do, that they do, is that, especially in Atlanta where I grew up, you know, they post officers in like patrol cars behind bushes. They post them in like under bridges. And it's like, don't you have anything better to do? I did a video not too long ago, because even here in little old Kentucky, where I live in, small town Kentucky, population under 1,000, I got ticketed for not wearing a safety belt, a seatbelt. And I'm like less than 2 miles away from home. I'm dropping my kid off, and I'm like, don't you have anything better to do? And, you know, we have some crime. We don't have a lot. You know, there's a meth camp here and there and whatnot. Typical, you know, rural America problems. And when I was like, if you're going to bring the state patrol, because it wasn't the local guys, they don't care about that. It's the stateies. They come in here and they do it to generate revenue. So there's a mistrust of police officers and the police with this, and for good reason, because there's a slew of examples of incidences where officers even supervisors and things like that, abused their access to this flock system, and they use it to apparently mostly track down like their ex-wives or ex-girlfriends and their current boyfriends or whatever. It's like they use it for personal means. And this reminds me of how the CIA officers were caught of doing that too. And that just goes along with this whole idea. And the founders really understood this, that we need limited government because man is no angel. As I think, is it John Adams who said, don't tell me about angelic men, bind him down with the Constitution. And so the idea was that we're going to have the Constitution, we're going to have limited government so we don't empower man too much, so that we don't give too much power to totalitarians and to the central government, and so that also we can rein them in. So the idea is that we're in charge, and this seemed to be have been lost on my police officer friend, who, again, like I may have mentioned already, seems to think in that same way that the doctors during COVID thought, which was that basically anything to curb this deadly virus is okay, it's warranted, no matter how much it impedes and violates our civil liberties. Obviously, that was not true. Obviously, there was dramatic, just very destructive ramifications about, that came out of locking people in their homes and closing businesses. Some of those businesses never opened up. That came from isolating children and basically turning hospitals into one disease facilities. People couldn't see doctors for anything else, and some died, some got sicker or whatever, and then eventually died and whatnot. So the way that the universe works is that when things like this happen, when we let the experts create policy based on the one thing that they know, this expert tunnel vision, it always comes back to kick us in the ass. It always hurts us because, as a whole, the people, the societies, the communities and whatnot, they all have various views. And so when you debate, and then when you have to take that to the people to approve it, what happens is either a policy that is more balanced gets passed, or it doesn't get passed at all. I mean, look at this war that we're in now that Trump has obviously been trying to get out of. He can't get out of it. He thought it was going to be easy. There's a recent report by a Wall Street Journal reporter who followed Lindsey Graham around, and he quoted him as saying that, they thought this thing was going to be done in 3 or 4 weeks. We know that Trump thought that was going to happen because that's exactly what he said when he announced it. So it'll be done 3 or 4 weeks. It's been 5 months. It's been devastating. Obviously, it's been devastating to them, but I don't care about them. Like, this was never, that's not my primary concern. My primary concern is our well-being, my country in which I live, in which I pay taxes, in which I'm raising my child, in which I'm hoping that my grandchildren will grow up and whatnot. And right now, it's the things that they're doing are very harmful to us all. Everything has gotten more expensive. We've lost American lives. We've added tens of billions to the debt. That's going to be a serious problem. And why did that happen? Well, it happened because for years and years and decades, Americans have sat by while presidents, administrations have abused their authority. And they've taken us to war without congressional approval a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times. And so when this guy finally did it, this guy being Trump, there was precedent for it. And I heard it. I was, of course, one of the ones I was on social media, and I was arguing with people in person too about, it's like, this is not right. Article 1, Section 8 makes clear that this is Congress's purview, and that the commander-in-chief clause, which I think is Article 2, is only comes in handy once Congress has decided that we're going to have a war and we're going to pay, and here's what we're going to do. Then you're like, come on, call up the commander-in-chief. And anyway, but a lot of people, their argument was that this has been done over and over, and for some reason they think that means that it's okay. It's not okay. What happened is it was violated some time long ago, and then people said, okay, see, it's happened again and before, and so now we can do it again. It's like, this is insane. It's bonkers. It's bonkers. And so back to the flock thing. I guess I always end up on Iran, huh? The flock thing. The encouraging thing is that there seems to be a lot of resistance. And it's not just vigilantes putting on masks and cutting these down, or I don't know, I guess hitting them with like cat lasers or something. I don't know what other ways they're destroying them or spray painting them. It's, there's resistance again in the city councils and the county commissions. There's some court cases. There's a court case right now. It's based out of Norfolk, Virginia, and it's an appeal from something that was ruled some time ago. But what happened is in June, another case, a lower court handed down a judgment saying that basically it was about cell phones, and the Supreme Court ruled in a case about cell phones that basically anytime the authorities grab cell phone data without a warrant or whatnot, it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. So now the people who are suing in Norfolk against these flock systems, saying that that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment, are using that case as a precedent to say, look, this is very similar. And since the Supreme Court sees it this way, you guys should change your tune. So we'll see where this goes. I think it'd definitely be interesting. I'm encouraged one way or another that there is resistance. It seems like there's some life left in Americans, the spirit of rebellion, if you want to call it that, the spirit of liberty. There's a flame still burning there. Now, the good thing about this is this seems to permeate political lines, and some of it is along lines that I don't care that much about. One of the concerns is that for some people, especially on the left and out on the West Coast where they're destroying these things too, is that ICE, the immigration authorities are tapping into these, and they're catching and they're using them to round up illegals. And just like I can't argue when they use it to catch, murderers and whatever, and I'm not saying illegals is the same thing as murderers, but I want them gone. I'm an immigrant and I came here legally. We spent 8 years jumping through bureaucratic loopholes to get here, and I think everyone else should. The U.S. government approved our coming here, and I should like my government, which is the U.S. government, to be picky about who gets to come into this country, because it makes no sense to like import people who have nothing to bring here, because that means you're not looking out for the country. You're not creating an environment, a country that's powerful. You're basically becoming like a charity. And I think charity is good, but I think in order to have people who produce charity, who give out charities, that you need to have prosperity and you need to have order and things like that. And that's why America was so charitable for such a long time, and it's still considered pretty charitable. People were prosperous, but they were also and they were generous, and they were all those things because for the longest time there was relative order in this country. There was cohesion in beliefs and things like that. And so that made for a strong country that could have, of people who can help and do lots of good. But if you keep importing people, who aren't here to do good, or we don't need, and they're just going to get on welfare or whatever, you're going to dilute the wealth of the people here. And that's obviously happening. So we'll see where this flock thing goes. I think if somehow we get to a point where it's declared unconstitutional and they all have to be taken down, that's a huge, huge morale booster, and obviously a huge precedent. Because this surveillance thing that is building is very, very scary. There's a lot of threats around us, and we lose track. And it seems like everyone has their pet threat that they focus on. The latest one I've seen is the Islamists, the Muslim invasion. We're told to worry about that here. I'm not saying that it's not necessarily a threat. There's a historical precedent for that. There's historical context to suggest that if you have too many Muslims coming into a Western region, then things don't necessarily end up well. So I think there's some legitimacy to that. But here, I think we have very few. I think it's like, I don't know, was it 2, 3, no more than 3% of the population. I understand it's growing, but there's so many threats. That's just like not on my radar right now, because I think, first of all, they're going to set up a like totalitarian technocracy, global technocracy, way before the Muslims in America become a threat. Way before that. There's other threats that are way before that are far more pressing. And surveillance is another one. That's another. It's a huge one. We can't let them get to this point where basically we turn into a police state that is un-American, and it is antithetical to the ideas of liberty and being safe and secure in our privacy. So I'm gonna leave it there. If you made it this far, go ahead and subscribe to this Substack. I try to do it here and there. Once I finish some odd jobs here around the house and whatnot, I'll probably do it more consistently. Just kind of doing it to ramble on and carve into my memory the things that I've been writing about. I write for the New American. I write there regularly. It's an amazing magazine. It's been around, and it's official in its current name since like 1985. Technically, it's been around since like the 60s or late 50s. And it's the original Red Pill magazine. These guys, we have been way ahead of the curve, way so ahead of the curve that we're considered, kooks and conspiracy theorists and whatnot long before everyone else came to realize that everything we've been saying is true. So go ahead and follow thenewamerican.com. Go over there, check out our stories, follow us on social media, and follow me here. Thanks.